Welcome to Neurotypicals Don't Juggle Chainsaws, the podcast that cuts through the rubbish to explore the world of neurodiversity. I'm your host, Nic King.
And I'm your host, Kate Fox, and together we're here to explore, understand and celebrate being neurodivergent in a neurotypical world. From ADHD and autism to dyslexia and other quirky brains, we talk about it all.
And go off on tangents. So whether you're neurodivergent, love someone who is, or you're just curious about neurodivergent minds, you are in the right place.
Let's get ready to juggle some words and maybe even a few chainsaws, metaphorically, of course. Hello and welcome back. We're going to be talking about autistic or our autistic kryptonite today, and this is very much a topic on the top of my head because a weird thing just happened to me yesterday. It was so weird. Basically, there was a knock at the door. I went downstairs. Two people were by now next door knocking, and they kind of looked over and were like, oh, and the bloke flashed his warrant card and said, oh, we're the police, nothing to worry about. I was like, oh, okay, intrigued. And it was like, yeah, and do you live here? Yes. Oh, but can we come in? Oh, okay. Yeah. So they both come in. And then, right, in summary, so actually it was already slightly kryptonite. Well, in fact, a lot kryptonite. It was two people I didn't know coming in my house, and I was in the process of tidying up. So that was already, but for me, it was quite a bit overridden by, ooh, why are the police here? What's going on? And so it's and this is a theme throughout the encounter with these two people. So they're plain clothes, we should say. So I'm in an upstairs flat. They walk upstairs. They then stood really quite close to me in my living room, and I don't know where to sit. And I'm like thinking, should I sit down? Should I ask them to sit down? There wasn't loads of, and so there was physical awkwardness. So that was already, adding to the kryptonite. But then the bloke said, I'm an intelligence officer. And I went, woo, because that was quite exciting. So again, it's helping override the, whoa, this is really awkward. I have to say, I think neurotypical individuals are looming in my living room. And then, right, how bizarre is this? And I'm now going to have to filter for security reasons. They basically asked me if they could well, we don't know where I live, do we? They asked me if they could put a camera for a while on the outside of my flat. Right, basically. And I was like, oh, I think I'd have to ask the landlord. And they were like, oh, we want as few people as possible to know. It'll be fine. And I went, so now, right, I'm stood in my living room so we've got, I shouldn't say, okay, names have been changed to protect the innocent. We've got
and some things for dramatization. I don't want a Netflix situation here.
it should be, shouldn't it? Let's say there's Bob, he's the blokey one with the ginger hair, right? He is totally giving off police vibes to me. And then there's Bill. She has lovely blonde, really well done hair, right? Really nice blonde hair. And a grey hoodie that looks like it's fresh out the box. Bill, she does not wear grey hoodies. That is not her clothes. Like, I know this. So, and what we've got is leading up to my autistic kryptonite, which is things that appear to be one thing, and there is an incongruity or something I'm not being told, building up to even a lie. And they're in my living room. They're basically, so they do want to put a camera on my flat. I think that the reason they're telling me they want to do this is a lie, and they're kind of right in my face, really. But at the same time, I'm also intrigued and like, what is happening? Which is helping. It's genuinely helping with the, whoa, this is all wrong. So I buy myself time, which is always often the right thing to do. Obviously, if you need to process something or understand something, buy time. And I say, on principle, you can do this, but I will need to see something in writing, because I'm trying to work out, like, there are too many signals coming in, there's the bodily signals that are coming to me of these two quite imposing individuals in my space. And then there's the trying to understand what they're saying. Like, is this what happens in line of duty? Do people just go into a random person's house and ask to put a camera there? Like, it really?
Mm.
Do they? Is this a, you
I
know?
don't think it happens on Vera.
I don't know exactly. No, Bill was not Vera. That's all I'm saying. Bill was not Vera. Anyway, so I say, can you put this in writing? Send me an email. Maybe I would do this. Is it my civic duty? Because they again had given me no sensible reason why I would do this. They
Yeah.
just were assuring me and going, don't worry, we're not looking at criminals and nothing will come back on you. It's not dangerous. And I was thinking, that is not my concern. It's not any of that. Didn't care about that. My concern was you are not telling me everything and there are so many incongruent signals, my brain is exploding. That was my concern. So they were treating me, I suppose, perhaps like a neurotypical person, or like what they think people are. I don't know. Like it was a lot. A lot was happening. And Bill was like one of those women who instantly hate me, because I'm floating around being all, whoa, you're an intelligence officer.
Yeah, I know that ones.
Here's my flat with the fairy light. And she's like, anyway, I just do normal things in a normal way, even though I walk around in a grey hoodie with my immaculate blonde hair.
That would have been my moment though. Like if you're
Okay.
not trying to catch criminals, why?
Yeah,
Like
yeah. Well,
surely that's kind of your job.
I have to say, right, bear in mind, I'm now talking about this on a podcast, and I have disguised their names pretty much, and I haven't said where I live, and I haven't said, they did give me our reason as to why they were doing it, but I presume wasn't the full reason. But which just shows, am I the right person for them to have instantly
I'm
just
not the right person for national secrets
this?
either,
Yeah, well, exactly. And I also said, because I wanted to see my backyard, I was like, ooh, I always wanted to be a spy. So I got, this massive set of incongruity. Anyway, they left. And I rang the police to check. I was like, I need to check them out. This has been so weird. I can't conceptualize why they wouldn't be police, because I think they were, but I think what they were telling me was not right.
Mm.
And it was just for me, it was an absolute jamming of all my signals. So I wasn't quite distressed, but I would say I was stressed. And I couldn't easily move past the multiple.
because we have the need to know.
Exactly. I couldn't just have left it. And I was thinking, it's right, like they could just come into any neurodivergent person's home without any care as to what impact they're going to have. And basically, apparently, yes, but I would say, well, they had quite a big impact on me. I was on hold anyway for half an hour to customer services, and I spoke to this really lovely woman, and she was like, this just sounds strange. She was like, I mean, she said, you've done the right thing. She said, I would have done it. She said, did they not give you their full names? No. Their collar numbers? No. Okay. So I give her the names of Bob and Bill, and she checks them out, and she actually speaks to Bill, who confirms, yeah, no, this was a thing. And Bill comes back to me. Sorry, the customer services woman comes back to me. She's like, "Oh no, it's a real thing. They are really officers. They are going to send you an email, but you've done the right thing." And then I get an email from Bob going, "Oh, we had a right laugh in the thing because you checked us out, but yeah, but." And I'm like, "But so much is wrong here, Bob." But I'm still intrigued because you're an intelligence officer and that's quite cool. And so I end up saying yes, and he's like arranging as to he'll contact me next week, little knowing he's just throwing a bomb into my little autistic world, really. And I don't quite feel able to say no for that reason. And then I replied and said, it just seems so weird. Like, how do you know I'm not running a cannabis farm? Brackets, I'm not running a cannabis farm. He said, if you were running a cannabis farm, you wouldn't have let us in. I was like, oh, okay. Fair deal. So now I have to be, I'm not going to mask with Bob, Bill, and their future ilks, but I could have felt like I really had to. So, in summary, it's probably, the police probably do not have a protocol for check out that the person that you're asking this weird thing of and giving half information to, and standing in the living room of, even when they haven't done anything, you're just asking them to help. What if they're a neurodivergent person and
Yeah.
you totally freak them out in quite a big way, actually, but not in an obvious way? You've just triggered their kryptonite.
And I mean, one, obviously, there's no list of vulnerable people for whatever vulnerability that might be that is available to them, because there is no list, and we're not counting the autistic people at all. But that's a slightly different issue. That would have also freaked me out. And I also have that, like, that profound curiosity that, like, you have, and like the need to know everything, particularly like if it's going on like within my immediate sphere environment. But yeah, that would have freaked me out, and I'm glad you rang, and I'm glad that you checked that you were safe within that. But there is something in that, isn't there? I think there's this narrative about autistic people not being able to read others that is fundamentally not true. And I think what people don't realize, possibly because it is a little bit scary, is that we are analyzing everything, micro body movements, micro gestures, tiny changes in tone, what they're wearing versus what their hair is, how they're standing, what they're saying, how they're saying it, what they're telling us, what they're not telling us. I'm back to being exhausted just listing it. But I think people don't understand that it's not just like, we talked about whether we were going to frame our autistic kryptonite within like relationships and like communication, or whether we were going to frame it within sensory. And I think a lot of people think of us as, oh, we don't like to touch wet things, we don't like loud noises, blah blah blah, that is our autistic kryptonite. But it's not just about that, is it? It's in those everyday like relationships, in those everyday communications. And it's something I really struggle with as well, not feeling. I need very open, honest and direct communication.
Yeah.
And if I feel I am not getting that, I feel incredibly uncomfortable, I feel incredibly unsafe. And then slightly back to sort of, perception and things like that, you start having that curiosity, you start asking the questions, and then you get framed as, I don't know, in that moment you got framed as what, funny? They thought it
Yeah,
was amusing that you
we had to laugh at that.
checked.
Yeah, and then
Yeah, but then you can be framed as other things. You can be framed as difficult, or you can be framed as, pedantic. You can be framed in a lot of different ways within that situation, and some of them a lot less pleasant than others.
exactly, exactly. And of course, what was it? So another thing was, because they're police and they're trained, as they walk through my entire flat, ultimately, they're looking at everything. And so I see them looking. And usually when people walk into my flat, it's more like, oh, I love your fairy lights. Oh, I love your seasonal tree. Like, people have a way of looking in someone's flat. And their way was, we're checking you out. Which actually is interesting, isn't it? Because perhaps that is one of the things that makes people uncomfortable when they're interacting with autistic people. Because actually, yeah, we're checking you out as well. And that might not be how you are used to being in turn perceived. So I can kind of, as perhaps I was at the receiving end of something that in fact I maybe routinely do, actually. I mean, it almost feels, it's like the parable of the parable of the lying police and the truthful autistic person, but it's not as simple as that, actually. We were both reading the signals, trying to interpret the clues. They just wanted a thing of me. I
Yeah,
don't think they did a massively good job of persuading me to do the thing. I had to think of my own reasons to do the thing. Oh, apparently a good thing is, oh, you'll have CCTV outside your backyard for a while. Oh, okay. If I wanted CCTV, anyway, whatever.
got it.
A
Yeah.
couple more reasons. So yeah, interesting, is it something that could be legislated for, or it's just if there was greater understanding that that some people may present differently and may feel differently about. It's not even that, is it? Basically, yeah, some people are massively perceiving and processing everything. If possible, just be honest and direct and clear. That's my hope in a truthful world.
Yeah. I I only manage to have relationships with people who are like that. Even professional relationships, you know, when like, you know, you have to deal with people for your kids or you have to deal with people, you know, anywhere. I really struggle with any kind of dishonesty, whether it's even perceived dishonesty, you know, whether it's real or perceived. I do not want to frame myself within Simon's black and white thinking, but I am fairly black and white about it. I really am, possibly almost to my detriment. And if I felt like somebody was sort of lying, or yeah, I would probably create a big barrier there very quickly. Because I just you need to I can't spend my life trying to think about where I stand with people. I've got enough. There's so many thought processes already in there. I don't need to add. Like, and
Yeah.
I'd rather just not.
In another podcast at another time, I will talk about how that is currently impacting my dating life. But I'm not going to talk about it now.
Not right now.
You have to have a very honest conversation with someone very soon, so as to go, oh my God, all the elephants in the room are too many. I'm being trampled by all the elephants. I think we have to say some things. Anyway, that's so I
It's
will.
hard though, isn't it? Because we're societal norm is, particularly in Britain, you
Yeah,
know, it is also immediately cultural. You know, about sort of like not being seen as rude
yeah.
or impolite, or that you shouldn't question authority figures.
I mean that, yeah, and in that instance, that was part of it with the police visit, and yet what? Oh, yeah, it was. It remains quite interesting. I'm aware that we've kind of counselled me over the the visit of Bob and Bill. What, Nick, is your autistic kryptonite?
Definitely, yeah, definitely within relationships, communication that isn't direct, that isn't honest, that can't be direct and honest, you know, like I've got to sort of be able to ask and tell. And otherwise I'll just stress about it. And I haven't got the spoons. I haven't got the spoons to stress about it at all. I can't be second guessing people. Like,
No.
I can't be. I haven't. It would eat into my sleep. And I like my sleep. My sleep's important. And I think it's something that I've had to grow into, because I did let that happen. I absolutely let that happen.
Yeah, and do you and was letting it happen, as in letting unclear communication on?
I would let people lie to me.
Yeah, yeah, gosh, yes, that is a theme for, yes, I've absolutely let
Yeah.
people lie to me while being tortured, because I can see it's happening and it's the worst thing that anyone can do to me, really, but
Yeah.
not being able to go, but you're lying.
Yeah. And that was very much a sort of theme of my teens and my early 20s. And I think it's one of the I don't even think it's necessarily like an autistic realization. Maybe it's like a self identity and worth. I don't know what, but like it's something that has stopped. Like, I don't let it happen anymore. And if it does, you know, we have to talk about it. It has to be like called out. We like, even within, you know, personal relations, even within work relationships, if it's happened, like I have to air it. And sometimes that's to your detriment. And it is. Sometimes it ends relationships, sometimes it ends, you know, work relationships, sometimes, you know, literally costs you things that were important. But I do feel like that aspect of my relationships and building relationships has to be done because it's
Mm.
not safe. It's not safe. And you need to be safe by the time you get in your 40s. You've got to be done with being unsafe by the time you're getting in your 40s. It has to, like, you've not got that much, it has to be done. It has to be over.
And so in a way, and because it can, like, so lying can feel like a moral issue, can't it? Oh, don't lie because it's morally wrong. Oh, but actually tell white lies or omit information because that's probably the best thing to do. And that maybe that's the social set of norms that we're in. But we're not actually talking about that, are we? We're talking about, well, no, lying, being lied to creates a fundamental sense of unsafety because of the incongruence it sets up between what we're perceiving and what a reality is, and also the painfulness of not being able to speak that. Yeah, I mean, it's been a huge, 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 huge theme for me all through my. I mean, I grew up thinking that my stepdad was my dad. There was quite a big family secret, many family secrets actually, and I lived in them, and it's almost like they're bad for. I suppose I have perceived my difficulty with lying as because of that, but I don't think it is just that, is it? That probably doesn't help, but it's yeah, it's an autistic thing, really.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we have that sort of, and I do have that, and it's one of my higher up. If we're listing where, autistic traits by strengths, possibly, like models of social justice and things like that are really up in my list. And I don't feel like we can have social justice if we have lying. I mean, outside, white lies, you know, things like that. Just, I don't know. I don't want to be something as meaningless as, does that look good on me? But maybe like when me and my children do double acro, right? And occasionally they hurt me, right? And I tell them it didn't hurt, right?
Oh,
As long as it's not broken and I can't hide it, we're just not going to make them feel bad about it, okay? Things like that, those kind of white lies. But I don't think that's particularly what we're talking about. We're talking about sort of like that feeling of safety in the relationship, and that is something that turns for me. And it is that sort of, we're talking about kryptonite because it's that black and white thing that everything can look great, but there is something that makes you feel unsafe. It makes back to that sort of that vulnerable word that Nic doesn't like. That apparently we even started to talk about when we're third person, that we just like in that, but
yes, that's how
I'm going to talk
vulnerable.
about myself in the third person when we mention the word vulnerable. That level of not liking it. And that's where it is with me. And then what I hate more within that is where I end up framed in that, when I'm like questioning, when I'm like, but no, this is my truth within this situation. You are welcome to, your position, opinion, and truth within this situation, but fundamentally there is a failure of alignment here, and if we cannot be aligned, where can you build from that?
Absolutely. And perhaps there is, almost with no judgment, which can be hard because I do judge people who lie to me. I judge them a lot.
Yes.
I judge them as a bad person who should be imprisoned. Actually, but I think perhaps it is about me, in fact, probably letting go of some of that judgment and coming to the position, as you say, we're just fundamentally, we're not aligned because I'm not going to be safe in this relationship or this situation. So, with love, you pop your way and I'll pop my way. Or in the case of Bob and Bill, you come back whenever you want to install equipment in my flat. You just crack on. Maybe I should start a cannabis farm just to confuse them. Yeah.
Maybe we shouldn't say that in public, Kate.
Oh, maybe. Also, I've never managed to really keep a plant alive, so it's unlikely it would go very well. But anyway, maybe that's my strategy. Um, but it is surprising, actually, how often, as you say, yeah, you might get framed in a particular set of ways if you call for truth, openness, honesty,
Yeah.
and really own how vulnerable you feel in a situation where things are not clear, or things are not open. But actually,
I also think there's often a failure to understand how vulnerable autistic people can be, particularly, if they present in a work full time, married, children, dead plants. Do you know what I mean? We are perceived to be doing okay with minimal help. But and I think particularly then there is a huge failure to recognize the vulnerability there and what kind of safeguarding needs to be done there. Because the second you were like, I've got a story to tell about lying and it's recent, I was like, let's check in on that before we record anything. Because
yeah,
my immediate thing was to like, let's check that, like let's check that you're safe within sharing that. Um and but that doesn't, well, it's back to community, isn't it? That is a quite an internal community thing. And
absolutely.
yeah, and framing of safeguarding as well. I, within my charity background, was always lead safeguard of the charity, and I have the level 3 safeguarding qualifications that you need, but actually safeguarding autistic people is very, very different to the training you receive about safeguarding. And it's within that sort of those vulnerabilities, which is essentially what turns into sort of like our kryptonite, that people don't necessarily understand what it takes to keep autistic people safe
Oh,
and not put them into vulnerable situations, often for their own benefit.
and actually, that is so pertinent to the situation with the police, because they actually framed what they were going to do as safeguarding somebody vulnerable, actually. So I'm trying to
Hmm,
not
yeah.
and my first thought was, well, I hope that person is okay. I hope they have support, because actually it felt like what they were getting instead of support was surveillance, actually, which did
Yeah.
not feel supportive. And then ironically, any sense of my safeguarding, it's not like I would have gone, hello, oh, also, well, this is this is all quite difficult for me, and you've done it quite casually, and don't quite understand why you casually thought it's okay to embroil me in your web of lies and chaos, actually. But anyway, you crack on. So I feel a kinship, in a sense, with whoever this unnamed, unknown person that they're surveilling, not supporting. Um,
And that's often why we get framed within superpowers, though, isn't it? That's because we want to rush to help. We want to sort of go out and do the protective superhero role. And, we want to, well, we can be framed within superpowers in a very different kind of way. We do not have superpowers, people. If I could explore people's minds with my brain, it would be very messy right now. But and then they never consider that sort of that other side of it, that that there is a kryptonite there that somebody needs to consider, somebody needs to like help with, somebody needs to mitigate. And if we are even trying to do those things where we help ourselves and we mitigate for ourselves because we understand our kryptonite, then often that's not supported, and we can be framed in a very, very complicated way for essentially, trying to offset this sort of like very strong urge to, do something or be curious about something. And then where sits our vulnerability in relationships around that?
Oh, that's so wise. Luckily, I haven't had any fantasies about trying to find the person that they're surveilling slash safeguarding and intervene in some way that ultimately saves them and protects them from all of the chaos and uncovers what's truly going on. Luckily, that fantasy hadn't even crossed my mind. Okay, it did. Okay, it
So,
did.
listeners, less lycra, less underwear on the outside, more attempting to safeguard yourself from the kryptonite. Thanks for tuning in to Neurotypicals Don't Juggle Chainsaws. We're so glad you joined us today to explore the fascinating world of neurodivergence with your hosts, me, Nic King.
And me, Kate Fox. If our conversation sparked a thought, a question, or even a smile, don't keep it to yourself. Drop us a line at hello@Neurotypicals Don't Juggle Chainsaws.co.uk or visit our website, Neurotypicals Don't Juggle Chainsaws.co.uk to write in. We'd love to hear from you.
If you enjoyed today's episode, consider leaving us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast platform.
Until next time, keep embracing the unique ways you juggle the chainsaws of life.